And you can explain yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Pete Smith. I'm in my 4th year of teaching now. I'm an English and media teacher. I was looking at engaging lower-attaining secondary school boys with reading. It's a real issue. I love reading, and I try and be a positive role model with that. A lot of students either can't access or they just won't. There's a real resistance to it, and that does prevent a lot of opportunities, as we've already heard in previous talks. It does make you smarter. Stanovich, Sullivan and Brown, there's so much evidence out, so I won't spend ages looking through that. And it is cross-curricular, it's not just English. We want to try and get out of that mindset that sciences, mathematics, it helps with all of those things. There's a real relationship between reading motivation and actual skills. And the DFE in 2015 talked about being a 9-month reading gap between boys and girls. It's a real issue for boys. So I want to look at the weakest readers, who've got weak skills and negative attitudes, the two sort of combined. And I had a set for which we tried to change this with. So my school context, it's a single-sex state school. It is boys, average size, below average pupil premium set. It's weighted good in all areas by Ofsted. This was just recently in 2017. It is in the top 25% of boys' schools in the country in terms of results. We have 6 English lessons a fortnight. That tends to be 3 a week, which I know is a little less than some places have. It's a very affluent middle class area, like 3rd in the country, lowest for crime. So it's not just a working class problem that we're looking at here. My class itself was a set 4, that's the lowest attaining set of 4 sets. There were 17 students in there, which in our school is quite large for a set 4. 3 left the school during the academic years. There was a lot of turbulence in that group. 1 moved into the set halfway through this programme I was running, this research project. Average behaviour logs per student, 52. The highest was 146. Only 2 students had less than 10 logs. Just to give you an idea of these kids, it was very difficult. 7 had been in the set since year 7. So there was a lot of entrenched views about what it was like to be in set 4, their attitudes toward education. I had taught them in set 4, so they had some previous experience of being my expectations. But again, all the social relations between them, some of them hated each other, and they were together in other classes as well. You had this idea of sync sets they created. 64% of them, this came later in my questionnaires, said they read books less than once or twice a month. 78% would read a phone every day or use a phone in that aspect. And this figure here of 64% actually would be lower. One lad on his questionnaire said he read a book yesterday because I'd lent him because he came to a lunch club that I ran. So that's slightly skewed, but again, just to give you an idea of that. Our school performance is pretty good actually, but what I want to draw attention to is that although in literature, in language we're very strong, literature we're actually below the national average. So to me that indicates there's a problem there somewhere. Something is happening. This is why I wanted to look at this. Nationally, there's a 20% drop at the benchmark between National Curriculum Level 4 and GCSE. There's a huge drop. I think it's 89% and 69%. So barriers to reading. Students need to be engaged in extended whole text reading, and there's several programs that run there. We've got Drop Everything and Read that Mark does, sustained silent reading, as well as some English classes do sort of 10-15 minutes that start a lesson at a certain time. Frost et al. Found that regular emailers and social media users have poorer attitudes toward traditional reading texts and methods. But that was in 2012. A lot has changed in 5 years. How many kids actually email now? It's generally Instagram and Snapchat. So I would hypothesise that's probably worse now because they're not even extended to emailing. These attitudes are generally shaped by their primary caregivers. And the resources available to them. They reckon, I think, 500 books in a home can be the equivalent to like a year's schooling or something like that. You talk about the 1 million word gap. By the age of 5, how many words they hear in the home. There's a clear issue relating to working class boys, but I argue that it's not just a working class now, that a lot of these lads, demographically, I think are in classes middle class. It's a real issue. This idea of a scholarly culture, which I'll look at in the next slide, that actually this idea of reading, is it seen a value? And incidental learning that I did earlier, interviews with teachers, that show actually maybe we're not teaching explicitly the skills needed to actually read, especially in secondary school. It's all analysis. Are we helping them with the steps needed before that? The benefits of reading, in 2009, notice all this enrichment, but actually employment prospects, social relationship, it ties into everything, as we've already discussed, so I won't spend too much time on that. Some barriers that exist in education as a whole. School isn't seen as boy-friendly. It's described as a prison in many cases. It's very restricted. There's a real lack of scholarly males. If we think about their role models, this hegemonic masculinity, there's a real culture to be a man, actually you should be pushing against these boundaries, that you don't follow the rule, but by God you get results. It's that kind of idea that actually we're always pushing those boundaries. Just what can you get away with without quite getting into enough trouble? And even I'd say nowadays there's been a real shift. Even the people we look to maybe in literature, think something like Game of Thrones, it's very morally grey, isn't it? There's a lot less good guys out there that we can promote maybe as positive role models. Key literature was The Matthew Effect. This is by Stanovich. The rich get richer. So if you're a good reader, you're going to get better if you keep reading. If you're not, chances are you're going to go downhill. And as Nathan talked about, there's this real drive in Victorian literature. At the start of this year, we did a bit of War of the Worlds with them, and it was turgid. It was so difficult to get any sort of engagement. And I think that's just going to get worse for a lot of these lads. Julia over there did this Fast and Furious with Joe Westbrook and the group with that, and that's a fantastic, that was a real inspiration where they did a longer extended read. They really went into text, really talked about this dialogic talk. The national curriculum itself, there's about half a page in there on speaking and listening key skills. There are 19 pages on suggested grammatical terms. So you don't need to know them, but they're suggested. So if you think about those power relationships, actually I was reading a lot of those and I thought, I don't know a lot of these myself. And actually just what you were talking about at primary level, I think, I don't teach that in my class in that level. Talk about the zone of proximal development, big fan of that. This idea of the more learning person dragging them along, really pushing them to achieve more there. And to Robin Alexander, all the dialogic talking, that really helps to crystallise things. You think when you watch a film, read a book, you want to talk with someone about it. You don't want to sit and write a review straight away. Actually, it really strengthens all of those bonds. So I was looking at how a class novel is currently taught. What is the impact on engagement? And hopefully what could I do to increase engagement here? So we're going to do a faster read of a whole class novel. We'd already done Of Mice and Men. I'd seen Julia's project, I think back in October time, and I'd already actually implemented it. I loved it so much I thought, ethically, it would be remiss not to try some of these things. So we'd already read Billy Liar as a play, and then we did Of Mice and Men as I was starting my research, and then we read the book of Now is the Time for Running, which people had done. A lot of nodding, it's great. It's a fantastic book, really go and read that, it's really great. And I wanted to teach students explicit reading skills, actually what to do when you get stuck, not just inference, but actually all these other skills that go with it. So explicit teaching as well of group talk. So this was a lower attaining set, had a lot of issues with personal relationships. So we came up, they created this as well. These were rules that they came up with, some reading rules about how they were going to act in a group. And again, these key skills like predicting, actually what do you do? Can we make sense of it? Are aliens really going to come down? Probably not. Let's try and make these realistic and useful predictions. So I was an insider, I'm a constructivist, I'm an interpretivist, I'm an English and Media Studies teacher, so I'm all about the treachery of images, I'm all about sub-meanings and analysis and the idea that things could be different. So I'm in my fourth year. I joined the schools then QT up in this whole time. So I was hoping for a bit of triangulation here. I had a research journal, I did interviews with them before, we did Now is the Time for Running and afterwards, and we did questionnaires with them at both stages as well. So I won't spend loads of time. The idea was they were semi-structured, to be more authentic, so we could go off on little tangents, hopefully co-constructed. It was really getting their involvement in it. It was confidential, so we changed all the names. We did it in the classroom, so it was quite naturalistic, but there was a lack of experience. They weren't used to being asked their opinions on things, going back to student voice. But I think they did a pretty good job, actually. And I had to consider my own position and that power relationship, and also possibly what they expected me to want from that, and were they just telling me? I negated that. I'd say the first question I was asked in the first interview was, can we swear in this interview? So I think that showed that actually they were fairly comfortable with it. There is the idea of the trustworthiness of the data and the questionnaires, that hopefully the whole class views, not just the interviews, but it did depend on the quality of the questions, which I'm hoping I achieved. There was a mixture of open and closed questions, starting off with very short closed questions, just to build that confidence for them, to make them feel straight away that they were contributing. So if you have a little look at this was the reconnaissance beforehand. How much did you enjoy Of Mice and Men? And when I talk to my department, they're very positive about this book. And I love this book. But maybe think about your own experiences at school as well, actually. Maybe you studied the book. What did you think of it? It was overwhelmingly negative. They graded it out of 10. Most of them rated it 4 to 6, which is kind of, 6 was a bit. So they rated it lower than that. Nobody rated it 10. 3 of them 7 to 9. And the rest, actually, a lot of them said 1 to 3. They didn't actually know. My initial reaction was they did enjoy it, because a couple of them came up and said, the ending was great. They engaged more actually with the killing of Curly's wife than they did with the end of the book, which again, I thought was quite interesting. Whereas Now is the Time for Running, a lot of them hit 7 to 9. A lot of them really enjoyed the book, and again, there could be a myriad of reasons for that, so they're quite tentative, the finals I'm talking about. In regards of the questions in the interviews we did, they talked about our day out, which they studied with me back in year 7. I asked them what books could they remember studying at school. This was a play they could remember. The only other book they could remember was Billy Liar in year 9. They couldn't remember anything from year 8, which is frankly terrifying, and it shows actually we're definitely not doing enough to engage them. When I asked them about skills, they talked about acting, watching a movie, they sat in a circle, and then they looked at differences. There's no metacognition to it. I mean, they've used the word analysed, but I think if you ask them, what does that actually mean, I think they'd struggle, and there wouldn't be a unified meaning between them, I feel. Whereas actually, when we looked at now as a time frame afterwards, and even the amount they've said with this, they've talked about text connections. One that just goes on about it non-stop now, and you can tell he's got that achievement of having learned something really solid and useful there. There's more explicit description of the skills. I think it shows more engagement with the topic just by what they're saying. They're talking about it being cross-curricular. He talked about geography and how they use it in that. One of the established, he's in my media class, he talked about using it there to make these comparisons. To me, I feel that was a really positive piece. Again, looking at engagement with the mice and men, if we look at the answer, I can't remember, I just know I didn't like him. Yeah? And I think this was one lad who gave it like 9 out of 10. He said he really did like it, but in the interview, again, whether that was due to the people around him, because I was there and was talking about it, he didn't give a lot, or I just didn't. There was no real explanation. A lot of them couldn't really remember the book, despite the fact it's only 108 pages. We tore through it. We did it, I think, in 5 lessons. There was no real emotional connection there. Whereas again, now is the time for running. I love this one. I loved hearing this. There was an adrenaline rush from reading it. You know, that's brilliant that he said that. Like, kind of scared, and it is. Those of you who've read it, it's a very intense book. Even this lad who says he didn't like it, it's because he had an emotional response to it, connection, I'd say here. Because actually, the ending wasn't the ending he expected. And to me, that's still a positive, that he still thought about, did I like it or not? And we talked about that ending quite a lot. A lot of them literally booed when we finished the book. I think 3 or 4, and then a couple joined in, because it wasn't what they expected. And when we actually talked about it, we had what I feel is quite a high order analysis there. That we talked, it wasn't actually about football, it's about everything it represented. Again, to me, that shows real engagement with the topic. So my tentative findings were, some did. Some did. Some were enthusiastic with it, and we got to the end. Some development of metacognitive skills, definitely some of that's embedded. As I just asked Jessica about embedding that peer feedback, this is something you'd have to keep with, especially with these lower-attaining lads, because they haven't got the memory for it. There was an ability to use reading strategies, and in some cases an ability to reflect on that, actually how effective was that, what do I need to do next? And I think they were fairly reflexive with it, actually thought about what they liked, what they didn't like, how they could go about that. Some students stated they were more motivated to read. Some were still resistant to the learning. I'm not going to lie and say, this was a huge success. Some lads didn't improve at all, but I'd argue it was more to do with extrinsic factors in the school. In terms of group talk, only 5 students rated their use of group talk sheet a 5 or more out of 10, in fact, of how useful it was. All of them rated their enjoyment at 6 out of 10 or more. So although they enjoy it, I couldn't embed it. And I think part of that was because they'd been together in this set for so long in many cases. The behaviour just wasn't there for it. We did an exam last week, which I thought actually was quite interesting as well. That one student in my set 4 class rated higher than my set 3 students, which I thought was pretty impressive. Average marks for my set 4 were 13 out of 40. For the set 3 was 16 out of 40. There's not a huge gap there. The other set 4 did get a higher average, but they only have 10 students. And I would like to be a positive here and say if I had 10 students, I'd have done a better job than with 17. I really honestly believe that. And I think even then 2 marks isn't a huge gap there. Limitations. There was the issue of the students' responses, actually how are they feeling at that moment, what happened at lunch, had they just come back from an exclusion? That would have definitely framed their answers to the interviews and the questionnaires and their role in class. My own bias in the research journal, they murdered me in some lessons, I'm not going to lie with their behaviour. And then when I went to write that journal, it would be overwhelmingly negative, and that was very hard to remove myself from that and actually write an objective journal. And the size of the group, it is just one class, it's only 17 kids, so I'm not going to say this is all fact. And actually the long-term crystallisation of that engagement and metacognition without that prompting to reinforce it and use it all the time, I know it will fall away. So I'm hoping we can stick with that. Next steps. Actually, I'm stepping away from reading. I want to look at a more holistic view. This idea of school as a prison. And I'm really interested in social pedagogy and learning more about that. I'm a big believer that prevention is better than cure. I think I can do more to fix this, looking at them generally in their behaviour. Convincing colleagues is a tricky one. Some of you will know that I've had people say to me, oh, you know, we read all this and it was really boring. That's not what I've asked you to do. That's not what the research, we're meant to be talking about it as well, and actually teaching those techniques. Some of them are very, I mean, I don't know what you guys find at CP these days. I find the staff are worse than kids. They'll sit down, they straight their arms crossed. Oh, I hope someone just talks to me for a day. And you think, wow. I think it would work better with year 7s. Actually embedding it right from day one, these methods, crystallising them, getting to use, they use it all the way through the school. We've just moved to mixed ability teaching for year 7s to avoid that idea of a sync set. And some of the SLTI call it a toxic group in year 9, because they are difficult, you know, horrible way to brand them. But actually, hopefully this will help cure that. And I'm putting together a new scheme work around reading, which all looks at behaviour, motivation and their life goals. The group talked about making things relatable. So I'm hoping that we're looking actually in the first couple of lessons, what kind of person do you want to be? And that's not about what job or how much money, but what would make you a good person or a happy person? And then what do you need to do to get there? What could stop you getting there? And hopefully we can review that as they do peer assessment every couple of weeks. And we do a thing called DIRT, Directed Improvement Reflection Time. This can try and be more holistic. The talk skills we're going to try and embed a bit more, and we're also working on a mentoring program with older lads, doing a football program, get some young kids involved in that, and then I'm going to trick them into reading somehow. But that's all really worked on at the moment. But that's me. Thank you very much. You can see again, just as a male, it's very important as a role model. I've got Instagram and YouTube. I put videos on there of education stuff and Star Wars Battlefront, so the kids can see that and see, you know, reading's not just for women, which is what a lot of them essentially believe. It's very feminised. That actually, I try and be a good role model. That's Howard talks about teachers. We are their secondary role model, and it's different at primary where you've got more time with them. I've got 3 hours a week to try and hopefully make them gentlemen. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.